We're up to page Mem, Daf Mem, Omid Aleph, and we're up to the Mishnah, which is about 2/3 down the page. Okay, now a lot of what we're doing now is an overlap between the laws of Yerusha and the laws of Yibum. So we have more or less a given in terms of the laws of Yerusha, but how do they apply in the case of Yibum? Hacholetz liyavimto. So now we're talking about a Yavam that decided he's not interested in Yibum, and instead he opts for Chalitza. And the question now is the following question. Do we punish him? Again, that's my language. You won't find that in the literature. But what I mean to say is, since he did Chalitza, is that an insult, so to speak, to his late brother, and he removes himself from the Yerusha of his late brother? And the Mishnah says, Hareu ki echad min ha'achim lenachla. He represented the Achim. Any one of them could have given her Chalitza, but we're not going to blame him and brand him with an X because he was the one who gave her Chalitza. He still remains an Ach, and under certain circumstances, an Ach Yoresh as Achiv. Let's say there are no closer relatives. The parents are gone. The father is gone. And there are no children. Obviously, Reuven died without children. Otherwise, we wouldn't be discussing the late Reuven in Masechet Yevamot. So that now the brothers inherit Reuven because the brother now is the closest relative. So Reuven was a rich guy. I'm just dramatizing it. He left a massive estate. All the brothers now have an equal portion in his estate, including the Choletz, the one who rejected Yevamot. Had this brother, we'll call him Shimon, opted for Yibum, then it could be that he would get the entire Yerusha as a Yavam. That's what we're going to analyze. The Yesham Av. So now we have a contention between the father of Reuven, we'll call him Yaakov, and the brothers, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Yisachar, who gets the estate and is the Yoresh of the late Reuven, because Reuven left no children. And the answer is that the Av is the primary Yoresh. In Yesham Av, so Yaakov is alive, Nechasim shel Av. None of the brothers will inherit any portion of the estate of Reuven. The estate of Reuven in its entirety, is inherited by the father. One says Yevimto. Now, until now, we were talking a little about punishment for Chalitza, but now we're talking about the reward of Yivu. Zacha b'nechasim shalachim. In modern Hebrew, they use an Arabic word, a chupar. We give him a chupar for doing Yibum, and he sweeps the entire very wealthy estate of his late brother Reuven. He basically, through the marriage, through the Yibum, he steps into his brother's feet, and he owns the late Reuven's estate. This is the Shita of the Tanakh. Now, again, I just want to point out, and we've discussed this in the past, the Shita of Abba Shol comes to mind. It doesn't mean that Shimon is motivated to be Miyabem Rachel, Ashes Reuven, because of the estate of Reuven. Because according to Abba Shol, if he's motivated to inherit the estate of Reuven, and he married for wealth, then not only did he forfeit the mitzvah of Yibum to some extent, but he is in violation of the Erev of Eishes Ach. So again, what Abba Shaul would say to this Shimon, this Yomam, is that, look, you have to be B'yabim because the Torah wants you to be B'yabim, and have in mind the Shema for the purpose of the mitzvah. At the same time, you're going to get a very hefty bank account to you. But don't be motivated for Yibum by the bank account. And now we get to the chief of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Bein kach ubein kach, im yesham av, nechasim shel ha'av. Rabbi Yehuda rejects this concept of let's reward the Yavam and give him first rights to inherit the estate of his late brother just because he was the Yavam. He still remains a brother. And if there's a father and a brother, the father inherits, the brother does not. And there's no reason, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to give priority in this Yerusha of Ruvain, the late Ruvain, to Shimon the Yavam, because there's a father, Yaakov is alive.
What about the
oh boy! You say the word ksuba, I get like hives almost. I break out in hives. Ksuba is very, very complicated. I mean, the real complication of ksuba would apply if, let's say, the Yevamot died before Yibum. That was the subject of Beis Hillel Beit Shammai that we discussed. Right? Mesa Yevimto before Yibum. But if there was Yibum, then she holds on to the ksuba from the late Reuven. And all of the nechasim of Reuven, the entire estate, has a shibud. It's leaned for the purpose and designated for the purpose of paying up the ksuba. So that if, let's say, the Yavam was Makayim, let's say Shimon was Makayim the mitzvah of Yibum with Rachel, now he dies, she will collect the ksuba from the nechasim of Reuven, from the original estate.
That was when we said that the brother inherited the nechasim. Here, where Abdullah says that the father gets all the nechasim from the son, so does the father have to give?
Right, because the father is inheriting an estate that has a lien on it. It's lien for the ksuba.
So the father will own.
Or I don't know if you say it that way, but it means that she will collect her ksuba when the time comes from the nechasim that are now presently in the possession of the father. Going to review. Now, Rabosai, one question I want to raise here, which I'm hoping we'll get to in this sugya, is the old Doraisa D'Rabbanan question. Is the machlokes between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda in the case of the Yavam versus the father, where the Tanakam says the Yavam inherits his late brother if he opts for Yibum, and Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the father is still entrenched in his first bid rights to inherit Reuven, his son? Is that machlokes on a Doraisa level or on a D'Rabbanan level? Meaning, is it that the Chachamim, the Tanakam of Rabbi Yehuda, concede to Rabbi Yehuda that the Ikar Adin, according to the Doraisa law, the father certainly trumps the Yavam as far as the Yerusha of the late brother is concerned, because Ha'av Yorish Es Beno, which would mean, therefore, that Tanakam is only arguing against Rabbi Yehuda on a D'Rabbanan level. There's a Takana D'Rabbanan, Hefker Bezin Hefker, to undermine the law of the Doraisa, or no. Or perhaps the Chachamim in the Parsha of Yerusha will derive from the Torah itself on a Doraisa level that the Yavam trumps the father because he married the wife, the late wife, say the almana of his late brother. Now the Gemara goes back to the Reisha of Hacholitz. What was the Havamina that because one particular brother, there's no father now, Yaakov is gone. Reuven now dies without children, and his wife falls for Yibum to a number of different brothers. What was the Havamina that one brother is excluded from his status as an Ach HaYorech because of the fact that he was a Cholitz? Shita, Salka Daitachamina, I would have thought Chalitza b'makom yibum kaima. V'nishkal kulu nechasi. The Gemara says just the opposite of what we thought intuitively. We thought intuitively that the Cholitz is to be punished. Give him a little patch on his hand because he could have done Yibum and instead he did Chalitza. Name. The Gemara says Avi was just the opposite. Let's upgrade the status of the Cholitz above and beyond his other brothers because Chalitza is a kiyum of mitzvahs Yibum. That the mitzvah of Yibum has two parts to it. Obviously, mitzvah liyabim Yevamot Yavel mitzvah, and first and foremost we push in favor of Yibum, but Chalitza is all part of the mitzvah of Yibum. And just like the Chachamim say against Rabbi Yehuda, that the Miyabim, the Yavam who fulfills the mitzvah of Yibum, now steps into his brother's feet in order to inherit the estate of his brother, to the exclusion of all the other brothers, so too the Cholitz will bump off the other brothers because he was Mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum. And then we get into the fight amongst the brothers who will do Chalitza. Because according to this Havamina, the stakes are very high. If the Yerusha, the estate of Reuben, is a very hefty estate, everyone's going to be fighting for the opportunity to do Chalitza according to this Havamina. Because Chalitza will give you automatic rights to the entire estate of your late brother. And then we go into the question of the Bechar, right? The oldest brother, the Gadol Sheba'ach. And do we now turn to the other Achim? Because he refused Yibum. Now the other Achim have a katan, right? Has the right to do Chalitza. And then, we'll turn to him to do Yibum. And then if he decides that he doesn't want to do Yibum, maybe now we're going to give him the rights to do Chalitza. Or do we say, no, we go back to the original brother? You remember that soon. Is v'nishkal kulu nichse. Do you see those three words? Again, we were trained to believe that you have to work hard to understand the Havamim, even though the Gemara rejects it. V'nishkal kulu nechase. Why? Because Chalitza b'makom yibum kaima. That the mitzvah of Chalitza is a subcategory of Yibum, of the mitzvah of Yibum. It's not like there's a mitzvah of Yibum, and then there's a mundane legal action called Chalitza, in order to be Mater Shuk, otherwise she'll be an Aguna. No, that's not what Chalitza is all about. Chalitza is a mitzvah. One of the chapters of Masechet Yevamot is called Mitzvahs Chalitza. Tosfos at the beginning of Mitzvahs Chalitza says that just like we have in mitzvahs, we have something called Lechatchila and B'di'evet, right? You can do a mitzvah the way it should be done. And then there's a fallback position with the Evid that's okay, but that's not the way you should have done it. In Chalitza also, there are two types of Chalitza. There's a certain kind of nal, which is mitzvah l'chatchila. There's another kind of nal that's not the mitzvah l'chatchila, a different shoe. So we see that Chalitza is a mitzvah. Tosfos vacillates whether you make a bracha on Chalitza. The end of the said we don't make a bracha on Chalitza. But it's a mitzvah. And if the Yavam, who fulfills the mitzvah of Yibum, in the case of Yibum Mamish, will inherit, according to the Chachamim, the entire estate, slipping into the shoes of his brother, then in the case of Chalitza, which is likewise a mitzvah of Yibum, he fits in and he's zocher to the entire Yerusha Kamashmalon. What is the Kamashmalon? Kevan shecholatz v'lo yavam harei hu kishar ha'achim v'eino notel eskol hanachos. Now let's go back to the Mishnah for a minute and read this into the Mishnah. Hacholetz liyavimto harei hu ki echad min ha'achim lenachla. let's try to analyze the nuances of language. Every language, especially a Mishnah, has its nuances. Hareu ki echad bin ha'achim. The chiddush here of the Mishnah is that the choletz is like one of the other brothers. What does that mean that like he's like one of the other brothers? The other brothers each have a ticket, that says on it, Am Yoresh. And the choletz also gets a ticket. Apparently the Havamina was that the choletz would not get a ticket. He doesn't have any rights to collect a chelik of the Yerusha. If the Havamina was that the choletz should inherit the entire estate of his late brother, then the language of the Mishnah is off. It's offbeat. It should have said, "Hacholetz liyavimto, eino ela ke'echad min ha'achim." He's no more than one of the brothers. Not that he is one of the brothers. If you tell me he is like the other brothers, you're telling me that he's not bumped off completely. And the Havamina was he should be completely excluded from the estate of his brother. But if you're telling me that the Havamina was that he collects the whole pot because he was the Mekayim of the mitzvah of Yibam, he therefore has sole exclusive rights to the estate of his brother, then it should have said, Acholis liyavimto, eino elo ke'echad min ha'achim. I'm telling you a chiddush that he's only like one of the achim. Ihachi says the Gemara, Hareu ke'echad min ha'achim. The language is not appropriate. It should have said, Eino ela ke'echad min ha'achim miboile. Ela salkid aitach amina hol the afseda miyibum liknasei. Another word for liknasei would be what? Li'onshe, we should punish him. The afseda miyibum, once he went ahead and he was choletz, this Yevamot can no longer be misyabemes. The chalitza generates an iser on all the other achim, and on the ach himself. He can't change his mind afterwards and marry. She's Eishes Achiv. And what makes her Eishes Achiv that removes her, it's mafkia her completely from Yibam, it's his Maisa Chalitza. Again, you might ask, well, any of the other brothers might have done the same. On the contrary, let's reward him because she could have been stuck without a possibility of getting married. He gave her the option, the possibility of getting married by giving her chalitza. We owe him a debt of gratitude. No. The Gemara says in the Havamina, we don't owe him any debt of gratitude. He's the one who took her out of the Parsha of Yibam, made it impossible for her to be Misyabemes. Is therefore Shema niknos es hacholetz shelo yirash b'nichsei ames klal. He's completely excluded from the Yerusha. Kamach Malah, the Mishnah teaches us, no, the choletz is like any of the other brothers. He does not forfeit, and we will not remove him from his chelek in the Yerusha. He will collect the ticket, the same like any of the other brothers. The Mishnah says, Im yesham av, if one of the brothers gave chalitza, and there's a father alive, the nechasim belong to the father. Where do we know this from? The Omar Mar. Again, now we're learning the famous parak of a Masechet called Yesh Nochlim, and it says there, Av kodem l'chol yotze yirecha. You have a father, and you have all of his children and grandchildren and so forth. The father is first on the list of Yerusha. The Pella is on the side. And if you go through the parsha of Yerusha, which is, I believe, where is it? In Pinchas or Matos? I forget. In Matos, it doesn't, the Av is not mentioned there. Even though he's the first on the list of Yerusha. And the Ramban seems to say, I mean, it depends how you read the Ramban, that it couldn't get itself to talk about a father inheriting his son. Too difficult for the Torah to mention. The Mishnah says, Hakones es Yevimto, according to, what do we have here? Hakones es Yevimto, according to Tanakama, Zacha b'nechas shel achiv, which means that he gets priority over the father, even if the father is alive. Yaakov is alive, my time. Oh. So this is what we're waiting for. This is the moment that we've been waiting. Are we dealing with some sort of takanas chachamim, or are we dealing with a doraisa that's built into the parsha of Yibum? So I'm going to read the whole pasuk. The Gemara in the printed text only has part of the pasuk. It says, "Vayah b'char asher teleid, yakum al shem achiv hames." Now again, even though literally, if you translate this pasuk, we're talking about the child that's born after Yibum, but that's not how Chazal interpret this pasuk. They understand this pasuk as referring to the ach who is miyaben. He's called the bechar. He's called the gadol sheba ach. And when it says yakum al shem achiv hames, what does that mean? If we're not talking about the baby that's born after Yibum to Shimon and Rachel, but rather we're talking about Shimon himself, well, what is Yakim al Shem Achim? And the answer is Amar Rachmanav Harei Kam. What does it mean, Harei Kam? That the Torah is saying about the Yavam, who's called the Bechar, that the Nachla, the estate of his late brother, is Yakum al Shem Achiv. Yakum means come. Come, meaning that he will inherit his late brother. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no. The father will inherit. Amar Ula halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda, v'chein Amar Rabbi Yitzchak nafka halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. We don't even understand Rabbi Yehuda. We have a pasuk here that clearly supports the shita of the Tanakhama. Not only that, if the Tanakhama represents the majority shita, the Chachamim, that the Yavam inherits the entire estate and not the father, then halacha ki Rab, and yet we're saying here halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. So we have two questions over here. Question number one is, what is the logic of Rabbi Yehuda? And question number two, why do we pass like Rabbi Yehuda? He seems to be a das Yachid. So the Gemara answers both questions. My time with Rabbi Yehuda, why does Rabbi Yehuda exclude the pasuk of Yakum al Shem Achiv, Barikam, Dichsiv, V'chaya habachar asher teleid? How does Rabbi Yehuda understand the words V'chaya habachar asher teleid? And he says the following: the status of the Yavam is kibachar. He has the same halachic status as the Bechar. Now, a Bechar in the parsha of Nachla gets Pishnayim, but that's only because his father died. So when does the Bechar have special, unique rights and status in Hilchos Nachla? That's only after the death of his father. The Torah went out of its way to call the Yavam by the word Bechar, to indicate that the status of the Yavam in Hilchas Nachla is identical to that of Bechar, and the status of a Bechar is vis-a-vis his late father's estate. Ma Bechar ein lo b'chaya av. The Bechar has no rights whatsoever, no special status in Nachla, as long as his father is alive. his rights to Nachla emerge with the father's death. But B'chaya Av, he has no special status. Because the father's alive. And the law of Bechor is to endow the Bechor with special rights because his father died. Af Hainami, the Yavam as well, who's called by the Torah a Bechor, Ein Lo B'chaya. So we now have a battle here between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda, how to interpret this very same pasuk. The Chachamim say, let's put the emphasis on the words Yakim al Shem Achiv, meaning the Yavam is called Kamlo. Kamlo means he now gets the Yerusha, al Shem Achiv. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, let's put the emphasis on the word Bechar, which compares a Yavam to a Bechar in Hilchas Nachla, that just like the Bechar has no rights whatsoever to the Nachla as long as his father is alive, so to the Yavam, according to Rabbi Yehuda, has no rights to inherit his brother as long as the father is alive. So now the Gemara has a kash on Rabbi Yehuda. Wait a second. What are the special rights of a Bechar L'Nachla? And the answer is that he collects Pishnayim Liachar Mitzvah. Is af high, this Yavam, let's give him Pishnayim. This is very fascinating. The Yavam himself is not to be equated with all the other brothers. So we have 5 brothers, we'll divide up the estate in 5 equal portions, but rather the Yavam should get 2 out of the 5. And let the other brothers divide up the other, the other 3 sections of the Nachla. In other words, if you're telling me that the use and the choice of the word Bechar by the Torah to describe the Yavam is a deliberate choice to give the Yavam the same identical rights in Hilchas Nachla, vis-a-vis the Nachla of the late brother as the other, as a Bechar, then all right, I'll grant you that therefore the Yavam cannot inherit his brother as long as the father's alive. I mean, that's for sure I could derive from Bechar. But in event that the father is not alive, let's give him the status of Bechar. He should get Pishnayim of the Nachla of his late brother. Shenotel Pishnayim liachar misasah. And yet, our Mishnah says, why isn't he upgraded to the status of Bechar to get Pishnayim? So the Gemara rejects this. Bidi Yakum al Shem Aviv Siv. If the Torah would have used the word Yakum al Shem Aviv, it would have meant that he replaces the Av. And just like if the Av dies, the Bechar gets Pishnayim, so the Bechar who now replaces the Av, Al Shem Av, he has the power and the right to get Pishnayim. But what does the pasuk says? It says, Yakum Al Shem Achiv Ksiv, Allah Al Shem Aviv. We're going to equate the Yavam with Achiv, with his other brothers, and he's going to get an equal share in the Nachla, rather than Al Shem Aviv, which would give him the upgraded status of Bechar to get Pishnayim. Nachakash on Rabbi Yehuda, Ema, why don't we say, Hecha deleka av delishko nachla, if the father's not alive to collect and inherit the estate of the late Reuven, then tiskayim mitzvahs yibu. If the Torah is saying, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that the Yavam is like a Bechar, which means that he gets rights to the estate only if and when his father died, then maybe we should assume that as far as the mitzvah of Yevamot is concerned, his status is like that of Bechar. which means if and when his father dies, then he has the special obligation in the mitzvah of Yibum as the Bechor. But if the father is alive, then lo lishkol nachla, and therefore lo tiskayim mitzvahs Yibum. Do you have an open-ended equation, Rabbi Yehuda, between the laws of nachla and the laws of Yibum? And just like you derive that as far as nachla is concerned, the Yavam is a Bechor, which means that he only gets rights to the Yerusha if and when his father dies. Then perhaps in the light of the analogy of the equation to the mitzvah of Yibum, we should assume that only when the father dies is there a mitzvah of Yibum on the Bechor, which would really be impossible. We never, ever consider asking the question in the context of Yibum, is the father alive? Yosef Rab Chanina, what time is it? I'm going to just try to run through the Gemara to the Mishnah and give it 5 minutes. If it becomes more complicated, we'll have to pick it up tomorrow because I see it's getting late. Yosef Rabbi Chanina Kra Kame de Rav Yani. So his name was Rabbi Chanina Kra. Probably he was a Bal Koreh. Or because he's a Baki in Mikra. And he was sitting in front of Rabbi Yani. The Yosef V'Ka'amar Halacha Ki Rabbi Yehuda. We paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. That should be shocking to us. We already saw that Ula paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. But this incurred the wrath of Rabbi Yana. Amalei, Rabbi Yana says, poke. Poke means get out of here. Pre-kiryach lebra, go outside and try to sell your understanding of what's going on. Go scream, we'll give you a foghorn, and go publicize that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda outside. That's not right. Ain't halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Tani Tana coming to Rabbi Nachman, ain't halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda v'amar le. So if Nachman said Elokiman ki Rabbanan Shita Yachid v'Rab halacha ki Rab. So we still don't have any justification for pasking like Rabbi Yehuda. Amale, that Tana that had taught in front of Rabbi Yehuda that ain't halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. I'm sorry, he taught in front of Rabbi Nachman, is Ismay. So the Tana says to him, erase it. Now, what is he erasing over here? We had a Tana Tame Kami to Rabbi Nachman, ain't halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. So why would the Bryce have to tell me, ain't halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda? We have a general universal principle that always applies, that we pass like the Yachid, like the Rabbin against the Yachid. So why did the Bryce have to write, ain't halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda? So should we erase it? Just cross it out? Of a laser of Nachman says, "Lo, don't erase it." Why? At halacha asniya. Somebody taught you the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. In fact, it was Rabbi Chanina and it was Ula. There were two Amoraim who passed like Rabbi Yehuda. So don't erase Ein Halacha Rabbi Yehuda in the Bryce. We need that Bryce. Don't erase it. Umukshahu de ikshelach. You asked me, Akasha, how can we possibly entertain the idea of passing like Rabbi Yehuda against the Chachamim? Yochid v'Rab halacha ki Rabbin. Is the afach. You change the girsa to ein halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda. Ulemai di afach, shaper afach. Masha afachta sagirsa yofa sisa shafachta shrei ein aloch l'krab Yehud. In other words, it was you who actually were the one who was responsible for the girsa, the text of the brisa, saying ein aloch l'krab Yehud. And maybe you forgot over the passage of time. But Lamai Dafach, what you originally said, and now you forgot about it, that take out the words Ein Aloch Rab Yehuda, Shaper Afach. Certainly Ein Aloch Rab Yehuda, and that's Pshita, because Halacha Kerab. Okay, then, so this is where we'll stop for today. And we're up to the Mishnah on the very bottom line. That tomorrow is what? Is Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So where do you say kids that father inherits a son? It's not been mentioned in the Passion.
I'd have to, if you get me a Torah Tzvima, or maybe I can find it in the Masechet of Basra, but there's a ribui there from which we derive that a father inherits a son. But it's not explicit in the Torah, in Parshas Pidus. Okay, Ramos, let me wish everyone a great day. Thank you.